Scott runs his own consulting firm called Dragonfly, and he is a wildly successful consultant. We're so grateful that we get to be one of his clients, his favorite client, I think. And, I think what I really love is his passion that he has for how businesses can do business that does good. That in the course of doing business, that the world is a better place. And he just has a lot of understanding and passion about that. Well, I think we're getting the last of our wanderers back here. Scott's going to talk. We always just sort of give him free rein, and he knows about that we're talking about transformation, and I suspect that's what he's going to talk about, and how organizations can transform and revolutionize. And so I'm going to turn it over to Scott Lochridge.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Christina. First, thank you for inviting me. This is such a treat for me. Those who know me know how much I love All Saints. I was saying to Jerry, I mean, what church meeting do you go to where they talk about economics? It's awesome. More importantly, All Saints, the universe sent me to All Saints during a period of profound transformation in my own life, and it was a critically important element and community in my life at a really important time in my life. So I'm a big believer in this. I love this stuff. I love everything. I was on the leadership team with you guys, and that, I mean, again, what church teaches everybody leadership? It's just it's wonderful. So I love you. I love what you do, and I'm not a futurist. I am a tiny little boat on a very big ocean. So what I see is kind of the wave on this side and the wave on this side in my course of action. But I do work with a lot of large corporations, and as delusional as it may be, my personal mission is to make business a force for good, and I think that is actually possible. I think love has a huge place in business, and I think it can be a productive goal, particularly in our society, which is really a capitalist system. So anyway, in the past, they asked me to talk about the future, and I said, I don't really know anything about the future, but I can come and kind of riff, I think was the word we used. But and last year they called me and they said, come and talk, and I said, I'm an angry man, I don't like what's going on, and they said, well, come talk about that. So I kind of had a rant last year about the Wall Street and the financial system and all the horrible behavior that continues to go on. This year when I talked to Christina, she said, well, we're going through this, of course you are, profound mission to transform. And I said, I actually know something about that. So I'm on very dangerous territory. My personal history in business is my brother and I worked at a company called the Boston Consulting Group, which is a strategy consulting firm that really deals with global large corporations. And all strategy is it's helping companies really decide where to spend their time and their money. So which customers, which markets, which competitors, that kind of thing. But we found early on, this was in the 80s, we do these wonderful presentations with all this cool analysis and R-squareds and logarithmic paper, and they'd go right on the shelf and nobody would do anything. So we quit and started our own firm back in the 80s to really help companies try to implement their strategies. It was that simple. And we didn't have a clue how to do it. What it quickly took us into, and we got really lucky, we had a couple big clients right out of the chute. One was Ford Motor Company, who was going through kind of a profound transformation in the 80s. We found that it kind of took us immediately into the organization. We had to understand, what about the operations, and it wasn't working. And that led us to a lot of the work the Japanese were doing at the time in lean production, to begin to think about organizations as much more dynamic processes and networks. And then that, of course, took us into the organization itself and how people are organized, and that then took us into culture. So we had to learn very quickly a whole bunch of disciplines that we weren't very good at. But what it started with an intent to make strategy actionable led us into very large-scale enterprise transformation 30 years ago. And it's been and I've done this either as a consultant or as an executive ever since. So I think it's wonderful what you're trying to do. In my personal world, the companies and organizations that are embracing transformation and actively working at it all the time are the ones that are going to survive, and the ones that are not will not. I mean, that's just the way the world is now. When people talk about change, it's an active management of transforming yourself. And I think it was Chuck that said, you never stop. So what I wanted to do, and I know you have your committee tomorrow, their best practices, which will probably report some good best practices. I'm going to give you my personal experience of what's worked in my work, and really provide maybe some tools. And again, tools are tools. You need to decide whether this is right for All Saints, what of these will work. And again, I will present this in kind of a business consumer framework, and trust you guys with your amazing intellects to be able to translate it to your constituents and all that kind of stuff. So if that's good. Any questions before I start? Okay, so I'm going to quickly cover approach to enterprise transformation that we developed and have honed over the last couple decades. I want to quickly give some other tools too. One is about a simple tool for addressing strategic priorities, because when you're transforming, you have to make sure you're transforming just to something and staying focused. And then an approach that we're using for change management, which is once you kind of decide what you want to do, you have to herd all the cats to do it. And then if we have time, I can talk about the trends I do see now. And then I left in the end of this, which we may not have time, kind of the books that I like to read, I'm reading right now, which are always fun. And I got the gift of you guys of Ed's book this year, which I really loved. Okay, so transformation. The truth is, organizations are human entities, right? And pretending they're not is ridiculous. They're filled with messy people, with messy problems and messy lives, and they have souls and loves and families. And I like to refer them as complex adaptive systems, like beehives and anthills and slime mold and all this kind of stuff. And they're very nonlinear. Very unpredictable. They're influenced by forces of nature, forces of human. So you're taking a very nonlinear objective, which is transformation, and you have to somehow, I'll say in a minute, eat the elephant. You have to kind of take a nonlinear approach to manage it, to get everybody together. So when you're transforming, you're really transforming everything. You just can't transform one thing. And I'll kind of talk in a minute that when I go to companies, typically in trouble, they'll say, well, what have you done? And I said, well, we just went through this big reorganization. And I said, so, why? What were you trying to accomplish? And they always have good reasons for it, but they reorganize because that's the easiest thing to do, is to change the boxes on the thing and move people around and change offices and move cubes. And, it's like the only dial that's on their desk, so that's the one they play with. The problem is you're not really changing anything when you do that. There's a whole, business system that has to change with it: the vision, the culture, the people, the attitudes, the strategy. So the intent is to at least try to recognize that and kind of embrace it and then address it. So what we did in a minute, I've worked with some big companies, and all of them have gone through kind of different journeys. And if I have time, I'll kind of tell these stories. But all these guys were faced with transformation at different times. Vanguard in the early 90s, they sell mutual funds, and they were really struggling. They were 14th in the industry. Fidelity was a big giant, and they were trying to. So we got involved with helping them kind of turn around. They're number 2. Wonderful, high integrity, beautiful company. Toys R Us was in the 90s was facing eToys and Amazon on one hand and Walmart on the other, and just getting their clock cleaned. I mean, they were just getting wiped out. And if some people in the room are old enough to know that they used to look like Home Depot. It was just warehouse, aisles and aisles and aisles of toys kind of stacked to the rafters. And what they needed to do was reinvent themselves to connect back to the consumer. So we worked with them. And then I'm working now with a company called Deckers, which makes Uggs. I'm imagining somebody in this audience has a pair of Uggs. And they make other shoes as well, but they're going through a transformation right now. This is sheepskin. That boot is a sheepskin boot, and they make a lot of them. Last year, the price of sheepskin went up 40%. That tends to take a little hit, and this is another very, very powerful, very positive, very spiritual business run by a very visionary guy. So they're transforming themselves right now, and on Sunday night, actually, I'm heading up there to work with their top 80 managers on one of the exercises that I'm going to describe here. So it's kind of happening all the time. All these are very different. If I have a chance, I'll tell a little bit more of those stories. Okay, so the linear view, how to eat the elephant. So what we basically did is kind of think through the elements of the business system. And we very quickly found out that again, what I said, everybody wants to work down here. You know, you want to buy a new IT system, right? I mean, how many companies have been in a situation where the solution, I hope I'm not offending IT managers in this audience, but, you know, let's go put it in a big ERP system or a big CRM system, and that's going to solve everything, so we'll do that. Or let's change our operations, let's buy some new tools, some systems, or reorganize. The truth is that this really works well when you get everyone focused externally first and then work internally. So you start off with what's out there and agree on that, and that then tries to drive all the decisions internally. So in this diagram, you have all the arrows pointing up, and that's really to almost symbolize you're drawing decisions kind of up, right? And it starts with vision. So I don't use the word divine much in business, but that's what this is. You know, you got to start with the universe, right? Something's going to tell you what you need to be and kind of where you want to go and how you want to feel. I mean, where you were going here is exactly right. You have to open your brain. You have to quiet your thinking. And get a team of executives to do this is a challenge, but it's possible. You have to start with either the whole brain or the right brain or the universe brain, and start there, because that then guides everything. Once you have that, a great place to start next is your constituents, your customers or your consumers. And I'm going to walk through these very quickly. But if you really understand who you're trying to serve and what you really mean to them and what they need from you, that tends to make a lot of the other decisions easy. So I'm going to run down through each one of these. Strategy is literally, once you know who your consumers are and what they want, what are you going to do? Process is, okay, now we know what we want to do. How are we going to do it? How do we do that? Once you know how we're going to do it, then you can start to think about your tools and your infrastructure and your buildings and all that good stuff. Then you think about the organization, which is, are we aligned to do what we need to do? And then obviously you can't ignore culture. And I'll say I don't think that's a big problem. In a lot of companies, this is the problem. This is you can do all this left brain stuff up at the top, and once you get to the right brain down at the bottom, you're in trouble. So what's your vision? And it's really, I'm going to work through these relatively quickly, but it's what you think about. It's basically putting on paper and agreeing, and the process here. I'll go back to the cooperative process. The process and the content are equally important. So you may all think you know why you're here, but the process of getting you together to talk about it and be explicit about it and debate it, and formalize it, and then to do this again and again and again, because the world changes and the environment changes. Why are you here? What's your purpose? How are you making the world better? It's always a good place to start because it gets everybody grounded with kind of the core stake in the ground. Who are your customers? And I keep bringing these cast of characters back. I'm waiting to see them in your literature. You serve a lot of different constituencies, as do all organizations. And they're different. Humans are different. And the good news is that you can start, even though each individual is explicitly different, you can begin to put them in different groups that represent kind of demands on you or expectations of you. So thinking about all the various groups and kind of who they are and what they want. And the other part that people don't do very often, and maybe a little bit counter, is who's important to you and who's not. It's okay to do that. There are businesses, not all customers were created equal. Some customers aren't good for you. And so you only have so much time and so much money. You have to kind of pick what you're going to do. You can't do everything. You can't be everything to everybody. And sometimes the hardest choices are decide what you're not going to do, who you're not going to focus on. So the other part here that I want to, and I've tried to put will in the word will, not the person Will. I don't think I have Will up here. You've got to be thinking 2 to 3 to 4 years out. Where are you headed? Where are you going? Kind of the other end of the telescope. So what will they want? How are they different from each other? How do they decide? How do they make decisions? How do they like to interact with you? What are their economics? So they're driven, we're all driven by economics. You can't ignore it, and that obviously has an impact on this. And are they all important? So again, just a series of questions you can quickly ask and say, you would create personas here or segments and actually talk about them explicitly, which is if you have a, 730 Sandy, who sat next to me in the back row, what are they after? And what do they want from you, and how do you serve their needs? So.
Can I just say, Scott, that
sure.
we'll send everybody the presentation, so you don't need to write every word down, right. Which I just realized. So if you're like me, you were having trouble keeping up, we'll send it to you.
And the other thing, again, if it would be helpful to answer questions or whatever with however you're going, I am in. Just let me. I'm busy, but I'm delighted to help in any way that I can. So. Okay, strategies again. Just where are you going to point the ship? Who else will compete for your customer, your constituent? So everyone has choices, even at 7:30 in the morning. You have choices. What trends will impact you? What customers will you serve? How you reach them? What services will you provide? What are your economics? How will you allocate resources? And what will you stop doing? So the first part of this list is really making sure you understand the outside environment, what's going on there, what's influencing you. And then the last part of this is making decisions. So in business, it'd be products, markets, geographies, that kind of thing. But for you, it's where do you focus? And these meetings are very strategic. It's really about where do we focus our efforts. So strategy. And the other part of this is doing it by customer segment. So you're thinking that, the mistake a lot of businesses make is one size fits all. You want to serve 4 different types of customers, but you end up doing the same thing for everybody. That's usually very inefficient and usually don't do as good a job. Second thing are the processes. Thinking about actually your operations, how you actually deliver what you do. What do you need to be good at? What capabilities do you need? And this is, again, if you've made the decision about what strategies do you want to implement, what do you have to be good at? Are you as effective as you need to be? Are you as efficient as you need to be? Do your different groups work well together, which is, do you have a good operating relationship across the organization? What do you measure, which is critical? How can you get faster, better, cheaper? And what should you improve? And I think even with you guys, I think these are probably healthy questions to kind of challenge yourselves, which is you're thinking what you're trying to do, taking a step back and saying, are we as good as we can be? Are we spending our money wisely? Are we using our resources well, given our strategic focus? And being honest and being candid, right? Am I going too fast, too slow? Good? Okay. Infrastructure. This is a tougher one. Again, huge corporations pour tons of money into information technologies, and it's always a mess. But you have to kind of ask both the physical infrastructure, whether like my shoe client, they're moving from a campus with buildings all over the place to everybody's going to be in one spot. And I think it's going to make a huge difference for them. You probably heard today or this week, Yahoo's asking people to kind of come back into the office. Those are all kind of infrastructure issues, which is what are you trying to accomplish with your infrastructure? Is your infrastructure helping you or hurting you? And do you have the right tools for what you need to do? Is there a better, simpler way? And a lot of people try to do infrastructure themselves, and that's typically a mistake. Is there a way that you can get your infrastructure issues solved by using somebody else, by using an expert, by buying it, or having people in the congregation do it? A good way to tell whether your infrastructure is working or not is it easy to shift course, and you're going to see the trends now. Everyone is talking about agility, kind of organizational agility. It's kind of the new buzzword, but it's very, very accurate, and it's very, very, very true. And infrastructure tends to tie you down. Hard assets tend to slow you down, so you have to be careful when you actually spend money on hard assets. It is. That's why everybody's moving to the cloud, and my trends deal is people are racing to the cloud. When you see real sea changes, and we talked about even this 4 years ago, the cloud has now happened. Is your organization aligned? So that finally, after all this thing, you've been dying to reorganize and dying to reorganize, now you can reorganize. Do you have strong leaders? And you obviously start with leadership. If you don't have strong leadership, your organization, however you're organized, really won't matter. Does everybody know their role? Are they clear? Do you have the right skills? And is everybody's incentive aligned? So this was Apple's organization structure with this. You probably should have been kind of a bright sun. I'm not sure. That was a very complicated org structure, which is Steve Jobs, yeah, basically said what to do and everybody did it. Is your culture positive? And again, this is, there's lots of quotes, but even from the great strategists, culture beats strategy all the time. And again, in a lot of organizations, this tends to be the tough issue. Is there abundance of love? And we do talk about love in business. I mean, it's obviously you have to get through the initial discomfort with that and then talk about what you really mean. Absence of fear is huge. Foster innovation and risk-taking, attract great people. Do you like coming to work? Is your work important? And do you celebrate success well? So all the things that keep a culture vibrant and happy allows really everything else to happen up that chain. Okay, the second, so that's kind of the first tool. Think of that as almost like a roadmap. If you thought about if you had teams working on this, or some subset of that, you actually kind of dive through this. Up at the second box, third box was strategy. And a tool that's been very useful and it's really quick, and it really promotes lively conversation is this. It's called the RICE tool, and it's just an easy way to have a really productive conversation. This is one of the things we'll be doing this week. I did it a couple weeks ago with the top guys at the shoe company, and it's just sitting back, basically knowing who your customers are, what you're trying to accomplish, the things you can and can't do, how much money you have, how much time you have, what do you reduce, what do you increase, what do you create, which means you're not doing it, and what do you eliminate. And this last one is really hard. It's hard to just kill stuff, but it's really important. The really great companies that design lots of cool products and have huge impact with it kill stuff all the time. And old programs, old services, they're like sludge. In an effort to transform, anything that is not, even though you really like the person that runs it, only 3 people come to the meetings. You have to just be cognizant of sludge in this environment. So this is kind of a quick tool. The next tool, which some of you may know about, there's the change management is a discipline in business that it's been around a while, and there was a guy, I think he's at Harvard, named Cotter, who's kind of the grandfather, and he came up with a program. Some of you may have been through it. And it's a worthwhile discipline. It's basically how do you turn a battleship? I mean, how do you herd cats? I mean, that's what this is really about. How do you take lots of different people and lots of different jobs and all busy lives and doing their day jobs, and how do you kind of get it, how do you move the big needle? How do you get people to move from kind of point A to point B in a big way? This is a relatively new one. It was developed at Case Western. It's appreciative inquiry. The head guy was a guy, the books are Cooper Ryder is the name of the guy, and I can try to make sure you get this. It's really cool. It's really built on positive energy. It's built on your strengths. It's built on, rather than trying to eliminate all the things that we all suck at, we try to build on the things we're good at. And it's a model. If you go to the internet, you'll see 4. You'll see discover, dream, design, and deliver. We added define because, again, focus is so important. So 5 Ds. Define is, which is really picking the areas where you want to have the greatest impact. So in your roadmap and your RICE, you'll probably generate a list of specific things that need to get done. Typically, these transformation efforts, just like you're doing, turn into initiatives. And you put people in charge of initiatives. Then you typically apply this model at the initiative level. So first of all, how are we going to have the greatest impact? The discover step is really, what are we good at today? What's working and why? And if it's not working, why not? So it's that step. It's rather than fire, ready, aim, it's that ready, aim, fire step. It's that aim step. It's the thinking a little bit about what's really going on. The dream is what it sounds like. It's taking a step back, envisioning success. Again, going back to the spirit and going back to your inspiration. Design is then you finally get to start generating solutions, and then delivers how you're going to implement it, that you actually get discipline. So you kind of go, this is going from right brain to left brain to right brain to left brain. You're kind of going back and forth where you're getting, innovative and creative here, and you're getting innovative and creative here, and then you have to get pretty tactical in terms of, how long is it going to take, who's in charge, how are we going to measure it, when are we going to check in, all that kind of stuff. So, okay. So how's our time? Oh, I'm getting over it. Anyway, I'll give you a real short version here. The Vanguard one, they were really struggling with customer service. That's why we got called in. And we quickly saw that they were, again, trying to do one thing for everybody. And what they designed it, is they understood that their customers really fell into different buckets, particularly in their 401k business, which was dragging. They had huge, complicated customers like Texaco, and then they had Ralph's Cleaners, and kind of everybody in between. And so their insights were what each of those needed was very different. And literally on a weekend, the markets closed on a Friday. They spent months designing. They came in on a Friday. The whole company came in. They were ripping out computer cords, plugs. They literally redesigned the whole company on a weekend, rebuilding cubes, where they sat in teams around client teams, and by Monday morning the lights went on, they went live in a completely new organization, designed completely around the customer. And it took them about 9 months to work out the bugs, but they went to number 2 in the industry in about 3 years. It was a really good company, very customer focused. Toys R Us was getting its clock cleaned, and we held focus groups with moms, and we gave them pictures to play with on the table. And we sat while they talked about their kids and buying toys. And 70% of toy buyers are women, and half of those are moms, and half of those are aunts and related moms. So we got them all in the room, and we just kind of let them play. And sure enough, by the end of almost every focus group, those moms had redesigned the store, surprisingly, around stages of growth. Infants, babies, toddlers, young boys, young girls, teens. And sure enough, that's how they think. They don't buy toys because they want to make Toys R Us rich. They buy toys because they want their kids to grow and learn and develop. It's love. It's about love. And so what we did was redesign the whole store basically around stages of growth. So it's now they call it the racetrack. But you basically, I haven't been in Toys R Us in a while, but when we did it, it was basically redefining. And then they reorganized their company the same way. So they basically all the toddler buyers and everything, and they also then split into teams, sat with each other. Very, very profound. It was really, and again, they had to transform themselves probably 3 or 4 years later. This is a company that is on their onslaught. Now, Deckers is another one where the price of sheepskin has jumped dramatically, and they're selling a lot of Uggs, and they still have shareholders. So what we're going to do next week is the RICE and the Appreciative Inquiry. We're going to walk 80 of their top managers through this process where we just take a step back and say, okay, guys, we've been incredibly successful. The CEO's favorite saying is, "What got us here won't get us there." He said it like 1 million times. So the whole meeting will be about that top 80 group who's been incredibly successful, again, transforming themselves for next year. And they're going to try to implement it literally in months. That's kind of how the speed of these things go. Any questions for me so far? Okay. Yes. What? What got us here won't get us there. Yeah. It's almost, if I got a tattoo, it'd be almost like you should get a tattoo. No matter where you are, right? Yeah. So rules of the road. Be patient. I know this is all kind of core to you guys. Be patient, be positive, be tenacious, don't give up, don't get discouraged. Be creative. Innovation has a huge role here. Thinking out of the box is big. And the thing that really worked for us and is the core of particularly Appreciative Inquiries is engage and involve as many people as humanly possible. It's just so critical that when you get there, everyone's kind of there with you. They've all felt like they've had a hand in the process, so that when you never arrive. But when you're at your new place, you're at your new normal or whatever, everyone felt like they've been part of this journey. So trends, what I do see, kind of taking a step back to the little boat and the two walls. So these must be the two walls. So in business, even with money in the bank, more money in the bank than ever, and a perfectly healthy economy, no one's adding any people. We're in a new. I mean, I love Buddhism, and this too shall pass. But right now, it's not passing. I mean, there's no change in the business community about it. Its interest in hiring new people. So the sense of really big corporations taking care of everybody forever, and it's gone. Everyone's kind of on their own. Even if you're in a corporation, you're on your own. And this Daniel Pink wrote a book called The Free Agent Nation, which kind of quantifies the move to contractors, part-time, independent. That's racing ahead. And it's really hard if you look at these organizations on people that are the least able to deal with that. The lifers, the old timers, people on the job for 20 and 30 years, people on the production line, people in the front, in the front of the store. It's rough, because and at the same time they're doing away with pensions, and anything that costs any money down the road is being eliminated. That's whether explicitly or implicitly. Maybe a positive, we'll wait and see, there is a subtle shift back to U.S. manufacturing. People are now, as the middle class in particularly China increases and grows, and this is all economically driven, people are now considering moving production and manufacturing back to the U.S., which will be interesting to see. Again, it's at the high-end products, but I think you'll start to see this trend continue as the relative economics continue to play. It is highly automated, that's right. Yeah, and it's happening in certain sectors and not others. I don't think you're going to, although some shoes are being made now back in the U.S. You guys all know this, but it's dramatic how quickly it's happening. The smartphone, tablet, whatever you want to call mobile, it is all moving to that device now. I mean, you still have mainframes and things like that, but I think Charlie basically said with the movement to the cloud, which is down here as well, it really allows full functionality in your hand. And businesses are taking advantage of that as well. Ever-increasing investor short-termism. My rant last year I don't see any difference in that. I continue to see horrible behavior, and I'm hopeful that the new senator from Massachusetts begins to have due influence is my prayer there. Rapid movement to the cloud. For those, it's the computing up in the data centers and things, not at your desk or in your data center. It's basically letting Google handle it. Focus on agility. I mentioned that. You see that everywhere. And the Internet of Things, which is intelligence moving down to individual devices. For example, UGG boots, which you can imagine are counterfeited like crazy. Deckers shut down 400,000 Chinese internet sites with fake Uggs. 400,000 in the last 3 years. Can you believe? So what they've done is they've put intelligence in every boot. So you can now, your boot will now have RFID, which is radio frequency ID, which basically you'll be able to tell, they can track their boots, but they can also tell if you've got a real boot or not. And you as a consumer can check whether you got ripped off or not. So they're basically moving to smart boots. Now they don't know who you are. They don't know who you are because you bought them through Nordstrom's, and Nordstrom's doesn't give your name. They just know it's their boot or not. And they can just basically tell it's an UGG boot or not a boot. They don't want to know who you are. They don't want to infringe on your privacy. They just want to know. They just want you to know if it's their boot. Yeah, there you go. That's good. I'm gonna steal that. And then finally, just for fun, because I know there's a bunch of readers. These are all the cool books that kind of are on my. I have like 8 books that are partially read. So they're either to read or being read. Velocity is by the Nike digital guy. It's a cool conversation. It's a really fast read. That if you want to get a sense of what this sense of agility is. Anti-Fragile is by the guy who wrote Black Swan. If you read that, which is basically there's these huge unpredictable events that affect everything, and this is his new book, which basically says there's some businesses that do very poorly with fragility and chaos, and some that thrive in chaos. I was distressed to hear Jamie Dimon, who's the chairman of Chase Morgan say that Chase is anti-fragile. He's probably right, they're so big. But anyway, To Sell is Human is Daniel Pink's new book. Free, I talked about this a couple of years ago, which is this migration to this expectation as everything is free. This is a pretty thoughtful explanation of when free is okay and when free is not okay. And again, for you guys, I think that's obviously really critical because you have so much content that could be all free. I mean, right? I mean, so you really have to find a way to monetize and create an exchange of value that works for both parties. How you measure your life? Clay Christensen is a guy who wrote a great book called The Innovator's Dilemma, which is you invent something really cool and then you're kind of stuck. He's a really good guy. BCG used to know him, and this is really kind of a kind of business perspective on keeping your priorities straight and your head on straight about what's really matters. Quiet. I think this is cool. We kind of talk about Ed speaking initially, kind of making sure you hear every voice in the room. Probably in my career, that's been the most important thing, is to listen to the quiet voices in the room. And then the signal and the noise, some of you will know Nate Silver's the guy who predicted the Obama election. And the move to kind of fact-based, high-quality fact-based decision-making has been very powerful. And this is kind of a sense to that. Anyway, so that's it for me.